We've done this so many times, we're going to out-execute you. So, Stanford's had success with their way, very West Coast,
traditional pro. That's really what it is.
Pro.
They have a fullback probably on like 40% of their plays.
Thick playbook, very complex, so on. And Leach is not that many plays, rep the you-know-what out of them, and which is really what Paul Bear Bryant even did back in the 70s. But rep the you-know-what out of them and then attack space. So it'll be fascinating to see, how this all – again, Leach and Kiffin, this is an experimental year for them. But for those of you listening, most everybody is competitive. You still want your team to win some ball games. 5-5, 4-6. It's now come out that the Bowls they're not worried about records. So you'll have teams that'll go like 3-7 and they'll go to a bowl game. And I expect Ole Miss and Mississippi State, I guess, to go to a bowl game, even if the wheels fall off. So
the real question is, especially with the SEC,
we were told yesterday again that there will be bowl games.
Yeah, if with the SEC's ties having bowls in states that allow attendance, how much more attractive is it to get those SEC teams there? Even if you can only fill that bowl, in December, maybe you can get it up to 40 or 50%. But even if it's 25%, it makes those SEC schools much more attractive.
Sure,
assuming you can just steal some ticket revenue.
Well, in the bowl game that Mississippi State and Ole Miss want to go to, they're kind of fighting for the same one. You want to go to Las Vegas this year and play a Pac-12 school, right?
I guess. I guess we're assuming that the Pac-12 gets their season off, does it all, and plays bowl games.
Well, officially they'll start the weekend after the election, of course, and they're going to play 7 games. So they're going to play 5 in the division, a crossover game, cross-division game, and then they're all going to play the weekend of the Pac-12 championship,
which will actually be their 7th game.
Right.
Yeah.
So you'll get the North and the South winner, and then they'll seed it again, which will be kind of cool, I think. All right, the SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Boar's Head. Absolutely delicious deli meat, cheeses, hummus, pepperoni, you name it, all kinds of meats, high quality, still family owned, 5th generation owned since 1905. We highly recommend Boar's Head for your deli meat sandwiches and so on, but for your game day trays and charcuterie and so on, you can find Boar's Head at Corner Market, Kroger, and many other stores in your community or neighborhood. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Blake, before we go to our guest, do we want to let everybody know what we're doing with this Y'all Lifestyle home gating experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Y'all Lifestyle store in the township is offering up a season-long home gating kind of giveaway. Every weekend, we want to see how you are experiencing football. Since we're not going to the stadiums and the Grove and the Junction like we normally do, we want to see, are you watching at home in the living room? You got a sweet setup outside, inside. How many TVs? What are you eating? What are you drinking? We want to know all the fun things. Send us a picture at Y'all Lifestyle on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Find the Y'all Lifestyle store.
Or Bow Bounds.
Yeah, or at Bow Bounds. But, yeah, we want to see it on it's going to be for the Y'all Lifestyle giveaway. Send us a picture, hashtag Y'all Lifestyle, of what you're doing. And every weekend we're going to give away a gift card and a tailgating swag bag to one lucky winner, and obviously bonus points if there's Y'all Lifestyle merch in the picture.
So what are you eating, drinking? How are you watching the game?
Yeah. How are you experiencing football at home in a weird year?
And you could win a football swag bag. We'll go week to week.
Yep.
Sweet. All right. Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We are on YouTube. You can search Out of Bounds Sports. All of our guests join us on the Coors Light guest line. We welcome in Steve Robertson, genespage.com, to the show. Steve, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Hope things are well, and I love the idea. That's wonderful. Allow people to kind of participate in that because you know as well as I do, Bo. It's like people are still going to watch football and they're still going to gather, and it's one of those things that kind of brings us together. And so I think it's a wonderful thing.
Well, we're excited about it. When are you going to Baton Rouge? Are you going today or are you going tomorrow?
Now we'll go tomorrow. We'll get up. Nemeth and I will get up at the crack of dawn and get on the road and go down there and see what they're talking about. You know, it's going to be an interesting deal at LSU because, I mean, you know, if you've been down there, I mean, it's like a carnival atmosphere. I mean, you know, as soon as you get into town, you know, there's flags everywhere, and a lot of school spirit. Then you get on campus, you get on college there. It's, you know, I mean, there's people tailgating all the way to 12, man. I mean, it's just one of those things that it's going to be weird not seeing all that.
Yeah.
You know, and I've read some other guys in the media saying, you know, it's kind of weird to just pull up and not have to spend an hour in traffic to get to the campus. So that'll be different. But at the end of the day, once they tee it up and kick it off, it's going to be football, and there'll be some people there, and they'll be glad to be there, and we'll have football again, thank goodness.
What are you most intrigued? I mean, what is the most intriguing piece of with the matchup between MSU and LSU, Steve?
Can Zach Arnett make Miles Brennan uncomfortable? I think really that's State's biggest, you know, probably the first box you got to check is what do you do to make this kid help you? How does he become a member of your team? And the way you do that is you confuse him and you blitz him and you hit him and you make him uncomfortable and you make him realize that Joe Burrow is not there anymore, and he's the guy that's got to make the plays. And he's a very talented guy with a lot of arm talent, but he hadn't played a lot, you know, 40 career passes. And so he's going to see a defense unlike any that he's going to see the rest of the year. And so it's difficult to prepare for. And you can go back and watch San Diego State, but it's a different personnel group. You don't know how they're going to utilize the players, not to mention that was kind of Rocky Long show at San Diego State. Zach Arnett's going to have his own wrinkles. And so I think State's got to go make that kid a bit of an ally. They've got to go make Miles Brennan give them the football or get the football out early and kind of shorten some of those drives.
Man, I feel like Miles Brennan has been at LSU for 10 years.
Yeah, and not to mention, I mean, people forget, man. Granted, they were a system quarterback type deal. We saw what Dylan Favre did in that scheme down at St. Stanislaus. I mean, you know, Miles Brennan put up video game type numbers. This is a guy that's capable of making plays, but I think it's one of those things too. Is when guys are confident in their actions, they say, okay, this is my read here. If this happens, then I do this. You got to change all that. You got to put him in a decision-making process that makes him a little bit uncomfortable with his surroundings. And I really believe if LSU throws it around as much as we expect them to, that Mississippi State's going to catch some of those, and vice versa. You know, with Costello and those guys as well. I mean, you know, that LSU secondary, despite the fact that they lost Grant Delpit and some other players, very, very talented. Derek Stingley might be the best corner in the country.
What did Steve Robertson, genespage.com on the Coors Light guest line, MSU, LSU tomorrow, 2:30 CBS in Baton Rouge. What'd you make of Leach's quote this week? Sometimes KJ Costello gets big arm guy disease. You add an extra 10 miles per hour on that sucker, and the receiver is hanging on for his life. He could use a little more touch at times, but he certainly has more strengths than weaknesses that put him above most people in the country. Your thoughts, Steve?
It's the underneath passing game, you know, and that's kind of the staple of the Mike Leach offense. It's not just about attacking people vertically. I mean, you're gonna attack the expanses of the field and really spread those linebackers out, make them run sideline to sideline and have to get out and cover. And in order to make that successful, you've got to have some touch on the football. And that's kind of what he's talking about with KJ is that, hey, listen, he can throw the deep ball as well as anybody in the country. But where he needs to improve that game is underneath, is being able to throw a catchable ball where his guys can catch it and tuck it and get upfield. And at times he's drilling it in there, and the best you can hope for is that you just make the catch. But there's got to be a lot of run after the catch in the Mike Leach offense. And so ball placement and then having some touch on it, that's kind of the nuance of the game that KJ's still kind of working towards.
Steve Robertson, we'll get to his book, Alpha Dogs, here in just a second, but we'll stay on Leach and his debut tomorrow. Steve, did you see the quote about, I know it's the corny, it just means more, but Leach is talking about the way that the players practice. He says it's their life, it's their potential future, it's how they plan to take care of their families. You can see it in their face. You can see it in the way they train. And then he ended it with this, Steve. You don't see that every day from every player in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I don't know if it's some gamesmanship or whatever, but it's one of those things we've talked about on your show before. There are a lot of guys in Mississippi from these, small towns. Many of them are the first members of their family to ever go to college, and so they go to college and they get a college degree, and in many respects, they change the course of their family tree forever. And Leach said when he first got here, he wants to recruit guys that need football. There are a lot of guys that like football. There are a lot of guys who enjoy playing football. But there are a lot of kids, especially in Mississippi and in the Deep South, they need football to pay for education. They need football to build a brand to kind of give them kind of a head start into a professional career somewhere. And I think that's kind of what he's talking about is there probably is a greater collection percentage-wise in the state of Mississippi and in the Deep South of those guys that need football to have something better in life. And I think that's exactly what Mike's mentioning is that it's a great opportunity these guys have. And if you go back and look, State, Ole Miss, Southern Miss, collectively, even some of our SWAC schools, some of the heroes in these programs are these small town kids that didn't have a whole lot when they got there, but then they made the best of the opportunity and became something great.
Out of bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, game day tomorrow. As Hail State will take on LSU at 2:30. All right, Steve, is there anything – what did you make of KJ Costello talking about maybe the light had come on and they had flipped the switch, or he had, so to speak, earlier in the week after practice?
Yeah, he said it felt like that, a switch had been flipped. And I think a lot of it, too, is just getting into game week. It's one thing when you're practicing for the sake of practicing, but now, you're working against a defense, you're working against a scout team. There's more routine there. There's some light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's kind of what he's talking about. But he says also that he felt like they'd had the best practice they've had all camp. And that's what you want to hear. You hope that's the case. You really hope that's true. Because, now it's time to go play a game. It's not a scrimmage at Davis Wade when nobody's watching. But, now it's going to be on national television, and you got to get out there and show what you've learned. But, you want to kind of hit that crescendo when you get to the end of camp. And so it's encouraging to hear that, but not surprising, too, because these guys are competitors, and they know now there's blood in the water. Now it's time to go to work.
Blake, you got a question for Steve Robertson?
Yeah, Steve, we hit this a little bit earlier today, and obviously the focus is on Leach and the offense. And we all know you believe the State's going to cover, probably not going to win. I think that's a fairly safe assumption. But what realistically does this game show you for the rest of the season without overreacting on the defensive side of the football? Because you are facing an offense that is returning almost nobody. And if you give up 45 points to an LSU team and Miles Brennan that has not played any meaningful snaps, what does that tell you about this defense moving forward? And is that realistic? Is that the window you see this defense falling into tomorrow?
I don't know if you can make any, hard and fast decisions about either side of the football after one game. I expect there to be some growing pains. I think LSU's going to score. I think at times there's going to be busts in the state secondary because you've got a lot of young guys out there playing together for the first time. On the flip side of that, LSU's kind of facing some of the same things too, and this is going to be a game of mistakes. The team that makes the most mistakes is really going to be in bad shape. But, yeah, listen, the players are bought in. The fans, for the most part, are kind of bought in. Some guys still on the fence. I think a lot of people, just because of the fact you can't go to games, you can't tailgate, it just kind of feels weird. But the reality is I just don't know if you can make a lot of assumptions based on week one. But I think they'll go out there and compete. I think that's the main thing that I want to see. Number one, I want to see State throw the football around. That's something we've never really seen. But I'm eager to see what Zach Arnett does with the personnel, especially those safeties, because of the fact that, you got London Kraft starting and he's got one career tackle. And so I asked Jason Washington and Zach Arnett earlier this week, and both say he's earned the job. He's played harder, and he's earned every bit of this. And that's great. It's one thing when you're doing it in practice. It's another thing when you're under the lights at Tiger Stadium and you got Terrence Marshall bearing down on you out there in the open field. And so I expect this to be a game where it's probably pretty high scoring, and I think State may not be able to score enough to win. It's because that LSU defense is a little more talented.
Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds Show, powered by Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center. Let's back up. All right, London Kraft, he's a walk-on. He'll start at safety tomorrow, Steve?
He will, and a lot of it's so funny the way people receive information. We had been hearing that Colin Duncan was running with the ones earlier in camp. London Kraft passed him, and that was kind of one of those details that didn't really make it out into the public vernacular until after the depth chart came out. But he's a guy that missed some early part of camp and has really come on strong. And to hear Leach and Arnett and everybody say it, he's their guy. And so it'll be interesting to see how he lives up to his billing on Saturday. It's a trial by fire for sure, because I don't know if they're going to see a wide receiver core as good as this one. Maybe Georgia. Alabama, of course, has got, Waddle and Smith that are really good. But, this LSU group, they've recruited exceptionally well at the wide receiver position. And despite the fact that Chase and Jefferson aren't there, they're still going to run their offense. They're still going to run their scheme.
Who leads Mississippi State in receptions tomorrow?
I think Javonte Payton. I really like what I've heard about him. And, we saw it ourselves last year. We just couldn't get on the field enough for one reason or another. But throughout camp, he has consistently been the first wide receiver mentioned. I've been told by some people on the inside there's some matchups with him they think they can exploit just because of the fact he'll have kind of the expansive middle of the field to work with. And so it'll be awfully interesting what they do with him, because here's the thing about Peyton that a lot of people I don't think fully appreciate. He is unlike the typical Mississippi State receiver. And what I mean by that is a lot of guys, it's all they could do to secure the catch. And so there's not a lot of run after the catch. We saw a little bit of that with Stephen Guidry. He was a guy, if he caught it in space, he could make you pay. Peyton's like that, but a little more quick twitch. He's a guy that if he makes a guy miss, it's going to be a big chunk play. And that's what we've heard consistently throughout camp, is that he is a very explosive guy that can really win the foot race to the end zone when he gets in the open field.
Do you think because this year doesn't count against anybody, if he has a really big year and catches 60 balls and enjoys playing, that he could come back, Steve?
I think he could, but it's going to depend. I'm sure he'll be a guy that will apply for his NFL draft feedback, and if he's encouraged to come back to school, he might, but I think there's going to be some guys like that maybe those fringe guys that might be a late round pick or an undrafted free agent that say, you know what, I'll go back and get another year of school and try to improve my draft stock. And I think, listen, let's be honest, as Mississippi State receivers, especially some of those guys who've been around a little while, you kind of toll through some bad offensive play for a couple of years, and you finally get into a scheme that plays to your skill set. I could see some guys kind of being attracted to that opportunity to say, you know what, I'm going to give this thing another year, and perhaps with 2 years to kind of show that it wasn't a fluke, 2 years of solid production, maybe that gets me in the draft somewhere.
Let's switch gears. We've got a couple of minutes here. Steve Robertson, GenesPage.com, the Boneyard Podcast. Alpha Dogs hits the shelf this weekend or next week, Steve?
Next weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, next weekend. Yeah, it's matter of fact, the books are on their way now to the publishing house, and then I'll start signing books on Monday, and all those pre-orders will go out Monday or Tuesday, and then people will be able to buy it. Lemuria Books, of course, will carry it. They're not doing book signings right now at Lemuria for me or John Grisham or anybody. They're just playing it safe. And so if you're looking for a book signing, you're probably going to have to come to Starkville or one of these smaller towns that I come to. But you can buy the book at alphadogsthebook.com and great bookstores around Mississippi. I'm really excited about it. It seems like forever ago that I wrote this book. That was kind of my quarantine project. But, it's all been done, and the hay's been in the barn for a long time. But here it is, and I'm excited to see it, book number 3. And it's already, Flim Flam and Starkville ones are selling again, so life is good.
Favorite chapter in Alpha Dogs?
That's a great question. I would have to say my interview with Rafael Palmeiro. That's where you can kind of, I was, 12, 13 years old in 85, when Clark and Palmeiro went to Omaha. Those guys are my heroes, and so to have a chance to have a one-on-one conversation with Rafael Palmeiro on the record about his swing, about his experiences in Mississippi State, about why he picked Mississippi State over Miami, and just kind of how life has gone for him. And, what I told him when I first talked to him is, I just want to talk about you in Mississippi State. I don't want to talk about anything controversial. I don't want to talk about Major League Baseball. All I want to talk about is you being a Bulldog, why you chose to be a Bulldog, and what that meant to you. And that was a special conversation that I will cherish the rest of my life. Steve
Robertson, the Boneyard Podcast, GenesPage.com, and Alpha rolling out his third book, Alpha Dogs, next week, which lines up with the home game that Mississippi State will have against Arkansas. Steve, we appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Take care, brother.
All right, so Steve Robertson says Javonte Payton, Blake, will lead the team in receptions tomorrow.
I would have said him or Austin Williams just because of the slot.
Or Kylan Hill, catching it out of the backfield.
I think he'll catch a lot, but if he leads you, he could lead your team in yards because of maybe like broken plays or like making great yard after catch plays, but
Right.
I think if you're throwing the ball 50 times and the majority of your receptions are to your running back, you're not in a good position.
Okay.
You know what I
All
mean?
right. No, that's
he
fair enough.
could have 150 yards on 8 catches, but there better be a receiver that's catching the ball more than 8 times if you're throwing it 60.
So Javonte Payton is who Steve's going with. You're going with Javonte Payton, too.
Yeah, but I like Austin. The slot in Mike Leach's system has been legendary for 14 years. So it would not shock me if Austin Williams put up 11 catches.
Yeah.
It really wouldn't.
Hey, great article on theathletic.com by Stuart Mandel. Mike Leach and KJ Costello take a migratory pattern to new pass patterns. So if you want to read that today, jump on in. We just read it before the show. It's pretty darn good. Hey, Friday Night Lights is always powered by Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center. Any age, any sport, any injury, they've got you covered and the student athletes in the metro area covered. Friday Night Lights is powered by Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center. We'll have MRA football tonight on ESPN 105.9 The Zone. They'll take on the defending 4A state champs, the Corinth High School in Corinth. All right. Also, if you're on the fence about your child's future and you want to call and reserve a private tour of the school at Madison Ridgeland Academy, call 856-4455.